As former spy agency contractor Edward Snowden revealed, the federal government collects a lot of information about all of us. So what kind of information does it have, and how much can it really know about us? I put those questions to a top computer security expert, Dr. Richard Ford, director of the Harris Institute of Assured Information at the Florida Institute of Technology in Melbourne. In today's interview, Dr. Ford describes the threats posed online to consumers, companies, and our government. He offers practical advice on how to defend our privacy and our bank accounts as we live more of our lives through smartphones and tablet computers. You might be surprised what you hear. Check it out. Richard, there's been so many revelations and so much news coverage of Edward Snowden, and what does he know, what doesn't he know? Let's take stock for a moment here. What did he really reveal that was new versus what we kind of already knew the NSA was doing?
So that's a great question. I think there's a big difference between knowing and knowing. So for many years, I think people in my kind of research knew that the US government was busy collecting data, but there was no smoking gun where you could look at and go, well, gee, this is the kind of data that's being tracked. These are the exact companies and the kind of things that's being pulled in. And I think when you see it officially in black and white, two things happen. One is that you know, as opposed to you suspect. And the other thing is that our partners, who were also busy gathering data in, can't deny that they know this is going on. Suddenly their populations go, holy cow, you're taking this from Germany or Brazil or pick a country, and you guys knew this. Suddenly they have to respond. And so it becomes a big issue. I think that this kind of data gathering has been going on for years and years and years, but suddenly it becomes a big issue because it's all over the newspapers, and you even have a cute little logo, for some of the programs that you can now go and see.
The thing that I am struck by is how many people you hear say, well, who cares if they just have my phone information and who I called, or what number I called and when, or maybe just some other simple information. What kind of information do they have? I mean, can they aggregate, and what kind of picture can emerge of us from the information that somebody could collect about us online?
Well, I think one of the scary things about that kind of data is that as sort of laymen, we have no idea how revealing that data is. I'll go back to 2006. There's a great example that anybody who wants to can go and play with, and it'll give them an idea. There was a release of information by AOL. It was basically Google search queries. It was around 06, I think. And the website that's all archived on now is called AOL Stalker. And what you can do is you can search that search data, and it's all linked by user numbers, not user IDs.
Okay.
And it was just 3 months, about 3 months worth of search data. And what the New York Times actually did, I believe, was they actually looked at that search data, and they looked at a particular user, and they ground it down, even though it was anonymous, to going, it must be this woman from this town in this place.
Wow.
And when you start reading that search data, you become astonished at how revealing it is. Now, if you start coupling that with phone records, SMS, Skype calls, actual web, more than searches, but what did you look at on the web and how long? Who do you talk to in foreign countries, that kind of stuff. Matt, there's nothing that I don't know about you by looking at that data. It is an amazingly in-depth picture of Matt Reed. And by selectively choosing that data, I can make you look like a saint, or I can make you look like a sinner. Just on the slice of that data. I mean, think about it. You're sitting on your couch and you're watching CSI, and
right.
you watch a scene and you go, I wonder if you really can kill somebody with ethylene glycol. Type, type, type. Oh, yeah, you can. And now you've got that, popping up going, yeah, look, on this such and such a date, Matt searched for this. It's very telling. A great example would be health.
Okay.
Right. Imagine some of the health things that you may have searched for, and how valuable that information might be in the wrong hands of, things that you might be concerned about your own health.
Things that might influence an insurance company's decisions about you, or things that people might know about you that they want to blackmail you about,
blackmail,
or whatever.
Life insurance. And the problem is, once that big data's out there, it never goes away. Big data's really powerful, and a lot of people have said that the next revolution that we'll have, we had this sort of IT revolution, but the next really big revolution we're going to have, both societally and technologically, is figuring out how to deal with these, yottabytes of information. It's just more information than you can possibly imagine. And right now, it's like the world's biggest haystack, and it's kind of sitting there, and we don't really know what's in it. But as we get better at mining that data, we'll be able to pull out pictures of people that are really quite alarming. Privacy is gone for all intents and purposes. And what we have to do as a society is decide where do we set the threshold for how much privacy do we want, and where do we trade that off for being able to, deal with some of the security threats that we face today.
One of the things that kind of blows my mind a little bit is, we think about, well, there's all this information. It would be so overwhelming to one of us to try to think about and make sense of it. But that's the whole thing about computers, is that they can make sense of it and even portray you and your life as an icon or something, or as a, I guess, a character, just about in a flash.
So you think about it from cell phone records, I know where you are.
Okay.
Right? And I can figure out where you were. I could even, with a sufficiently big computer, correlate that you tend to show up at the same place as some other person more than would be done by chance. So even if you never called that person, you end up in the same place once a month, once every 2 weeks. That's a really interesting thing to learn about you, right? The other thing is computers are really, really good at crunching through huge amounts of data. And there's a reason why the US government owns some of the biggest computers in the world.
What should we know about the internet companies that, it turns out, either were subpoenaed to turn over information, or I don't know, in some cases it sounded like there was almost a system in place where if the NSA or some agency wanted information, they would almost just go to a website, a secure website, and request it, and it would be turned over in some fashion. So many of us live our lives in many ways through a Facebook or an AOL or Google or Hotmail accounts.
Mm-hmm.
Are they on our side, or are they? What should we know about them?
So let me tell you how I believe this works. And again, I haven't been, the subject of one of these information requests, but this is my understanding of the way it works. Is that I think pretty much post-Patriot, that's really where a lot of this stuff changed. What happened is that these companies really don't have a lot of choice. They can be sent an information request and they have to comply, or they can appeal it to a special court that deals with these kind of issues. And if the court essentially rubber stamps the request, the idea was that the court would be a checks and balances. It makes certain that the power isn't abused. Whether it's worked that way or not is a subject of much debate. But essentially, if the US government asks, my understanding is that you don't have a lot of choice. And that you must comply if the court system tells you that you do have to.
What are some of the concerns that you and your profession have when it comes to information assurance, security? I imagine, the combination of these gigantic storehouses of information plus groups that want to hack it could be pretty dangerous.
Oh yeah. So there are two primary concerns that I have. One is, of course, my government, or little shards of my government, having this much information about me. And that's very distressing. Maybe I get on their list because I'm looking at peaceful revolution, or some security thing that I'm researching.
Some algorithm flags you.
Some algorithm flags me, and that might be really scary. It's okay if you've got a government you trust, but if you have a government you don't trust, you're never going to be able to get rid of them in this society, right? Because it's just not going to happen.
Right.
The second thing, though, is these systems are out there. Now imagine a data breach where Snowden Mark II walks out with a couple of terabytes of personal data on a few key people, right? And gets that off-prem. We've seen that these kind of breaches can happen. Back in the good old days, it was really hard to steal a lot of information from a classified facility.
It sounds like that's happening more and more a little.
Well, yeah. Now it's just a matter of the right storage device getting through the right system, and now you're off to the races. And yeah, this would be, imagine a group like Anonymous getting into a system like this. Now, they're not sitting on Lion, but there is federal access during investigations to these kind of things. So they're not as isolated as we might want to think, too. And again, that's supposition. I haven't put my hands on the system for good reason. But we can imagine that they're a huge target for an attacker. And if an attacker actually ever got in there, especially if they're politically motivated, they'd pull out the most salacious and interesting information about, some of our government as they could.
Useful information to somebody.
Actionable, for sure, yeah.
Do the Chinese pose a threat to this? There's been headlines about the United States, out of this very same story, the United States hacking and spying on China, but vice versa, them spying on the United States. And there must be other countries that are involved in this as well. Is there a risk that somebody else, some other nation, gets into this information and uses it against us in some fashion.
It's certainly a huge target. I mean, the thing I would say on other nations is, if we're doing it to them, I guarantee that they're doing it to us and vice versa, right? So there's sort of virtual lead going across that sort of boundary all the time. And it's a real mess how we're dealing with both friends and people that we're not so friendly with out there. And we tend to single out China, and there are some really interesting unclassified reports on the threat that the US government believes some of the China telecom companies pose to us. Huawei is the big example. And that came up actually in a recent news story about the UK net filtering, which I'm sure you've seen Cameron's speech on that.
Right.
And in fact, one of the revelations was the system that he was praising was actually built by Huawei, which has very close ties to the Chinese government. So it's all very interesting stuff. It's a messy world out there.
I remember Google was several years ago was doing business in China, then suddenly pulled out of China in some fashion because they were concerned about the security. What's the latest on that kind of situation?
So I haven't been following that in the kind of detail that I should to really make a very informed comment. But I'll say that to operate within China, there are certain restrictions that you have to play a particular way with the Chinese government. And some companies like Google have felt uncomfortable in those situations. One of the big challenges in some more closed locations is keeping track of should we filter our web searches or not? You know, should I give you a different set of web searches than I might give somebody in America, for example? And those are really thorny and tricky issues for companies who want to operate in those countries.
We have a lot of defense contractors, aerospace contractors in Brevard County, and I imagine some of the work that you do is aimed towards helping them. I mean, what are some of the concerns that some of these defense contractors have in terms of their security? So
obviously these defense contractors are very much in the crosshairs of the bad guys, whether they're hackers, nation states, or just independents. But in fact, I would say one of the biggest challenges these defense contractors have is human capital. They can't get good people. So we could play better defense if we had a team that didn't have 4 people on the field but had 11. We might do a bit better. And so the human capital issue is massive. You look at the salaries that folks are making in this industry, in the cyber industry, and it's ridiculous. The first digit of the salary usually starts, or frequently starts, with a 2 or more.
Wow.
These are jackpot salaries. They're great.
So what kind of work do you do at Florida Tech right now?
Well, we're continuing to work on what I'd call disruptive research.
Okay.
We do a lot of work with various bits of the defense industry. We also do a lot of work in the private sector. They're pretty broad projects, mostly on the defense side. So how can we become better defenders in the cyber world, which is a lot about situational awareness, or can we make computers that are more robust and more resilient to attack? And our run rate, we're doing pretty well now. We're probably up to a couple of million a year in research. The Institute's growing. We just hired 2 new faculty members to come work dedicated in cybersecurity. We've got a fully online master's program and a master's program in cybersecurity that we're starting on campus this fall. It's going really well, actually. We do a lot of disruptive, kind of heavyweight research, which is fun.
What does disruptive mean?
Well, so we're playing this crazy game with the attackers, right? And it's like we're playing, a game where the rules are stacked against us. And I don't want to play that game anymore because we keep losing. It's like I'm playing the think of the bigger number with Matt game, right? And you say, okay, Rich, whichever one of us can think of the bigger number wins. You go first. Tell me what your number is. And, I think you're going to win that every time. We need to find a better game to play with attackers. And that means we need to find ways to break some of these artificial rules that we have about the way computers function and the way that we use information technology. If we just keep playing the who can be a better defender game against an attacker who only has to get it right once, we're going to lose. So we have to make it a little bit more dangerous to attack, for example. So we've been looking at some biological systems, predator-prey models, because it's not free in nature to be a predator.
Computers that fight back.
Yeah, and that can be very double-edged, because often if I'm going to attack you, I'm not going to do it from my desktop. I'm going to break into somebody else that I don't like and attack you from there. And if you fight back against them, well, that's not going to end
collateral
well.
damage.
Collateral damage, right?
Wow. You had mentioned something in a past interview that I just thought was an interesting concept, and that was this issue of passwords. That passwords may not be the best way to defend your security. There must be, maybe there's some other fashion.
Yeah, passwords are so old school, right? And
I've gotten to the point where they have to be so complex, and I have to have so many different passwords that I wind up writing them down and even keeping them on a file on my computer or my phone so that I know wherever I go how to get in. That can only be more dangerous, I'm thinking.
Well, it's like the one ring to rule them all, right? If I get into that, now you're in a world of pain. I'll tell you that I had to create an account on supposedly a very high security website a couple of weeks ago, and their password instructions were so incomprehensible. I used as my password their password instructions. I just typed
really?
Yeah, and just rolled my eyes, because now at least I can look it up anytime I want. It's really very sad. It's like, your password must consist of, and if, you take the first letter of every word, and you end up with a decent password.
Well, that's not a bad. That's not a bad idea. I might try that next time I do. But then, what if it says somebody else has already taken this password? Then I'm really in trouble. I keep coming back to this idea, or this quote that I think was the former Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld said. There are known knowns, known unknowns, and then there's just unknown unknowns. And with this cybersecurity and information world, I'm just tempted to ask, what do you think about today that you don't see reported in the news? I mean, like you said, you always knew that that agencies were collecting all this information, but then later you knew. So what is it that you suspect is going on today that sort of stretches our imaginations that
well, I think
we're not talking about?
I think we have foreign intelligence services and foreign powers way into our systems at a magnitude that we have no idea.
Okay.
Right. I think our systems, to use a hacker term, are much more owned than we have any idea. And the reason that the lights are staying on right now is it doesn't suit their best interests to turn them off.
That's a scary thought. I know we've talked about this before, but what kinds of major public systems really are at the mercy of somebody who controls online information?
So all of them. Power is one of the big ones, telecom obviously, but I think the one that we ignore most as members of the public, SCADA systems, which are the not government systems, they're the systems that might control a factory or do monitoring, like the St. John's Water Management, right? They have these little SCADA systems that tell you how high the water is. Imagine you have a lot of fun by controlling a system like that.
I imagine that could include online trading programs.
Yeah, so the banking system works on confidence. It works because I believe the system.
Right.
And as soon as people stop believing the system,
ouch, then we're really in trouble.
So, and I'll say something else. Money isn't that green, crinkly stuff anymore. It's ones and zeros, right? Money has ceased to be what's in my wallet. It's all ones and zeros. And if you can control the ones and zeros, you can channel incomprehensible amounts of money around fairly invisibly.
Do you think that's owned?
I know it's very frequently under attack. How deep the bad guys are in, I don't know. We used to do some pen testing work, and I know that when we were set up against banks, we never really lost.
We talked earlier about the law and what people can say or not say, and you pointed out a wrinkle in that I thought was worth repeating for viewers about classified information. Even though something may come out in the news by way of Mr. Snowden, people can't repeat it? What's that?
My layman's understanding, and it is a layman's understanding, is that just because something gets leaked doesn't make it unclassified. It has to be officially unclassified, so it remains classified. And in fact, as an editor of a magazine, I have to be very careful that I don't republish something that was based on classified information. And that's difficult, because as somebody who doesn't hold a clearance, I don't know what's classified or not. So it's very challenging. But yeah, that's my understanding of US law. That just because it's leaked doesn't make it suddenly unclassified. It still remains classified, and I can be in hot water if I regurgitate it and reproduce it.
I'm not a contractor or somebody, so we may be complaining about something on our news pages that our own senator may not be able to acknowledge, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. There are certain things that you could print that somebody who was deeper in just could neither confirm nor deny. And in fact, you know, one of the things that you get a lot is, well, you can neither confirm nor deny, ...
You're always great about offering our viewers some practical advice. Mobile is just exploding now. I know that our audience, we reach them more and more by their mobile phones, by their tablet devices. What kinds of security measures should people be keeping in mind these days with their phones and their mobile devices?
So it's really messy, and it's very much an emergent situation. Your mobile, my mobile, is the key to everything I do. If somebody gets my mobile phone, you know, and I'm in a world of pain, right? I mean, yeah, passwords, access to my work account, access to my personal accounts, access to my bank. You know, only I was sitting on the couch on Saturday and I moved, you know, a chunk of money from one account to another account from my phone. So our mobile phones are incredibly powerful, and unlike your desktop, you don't leave your desktop computer accidentally in a bar, generally. But you do leave your phone in a bar, and if somebody can unlock it, which isn't particularly difficult, you're in a world of pain. I think we haven't really thought this through yet. And I think we're still dealing with this sort of situation where as consumers, we're trying to figure out what our risk tolerance is. So I know, for example, for Android, a lot of people who run Android like to unlock the bootloader and root their phones. And there are some reasons why you might not want to do that. It changes the security stance of your phone. How we deal with things like that are complicated. And I think this is one of these things where it's going to depend on how it plays out. Pain drives behavior, right? When you do something and you go, ow, that hurts, you learn to act differently. So I think everything's moving too early, too quickly for us to really predict what the next step's going to be.
It seems to me like one of the big areas of risk is what I hear happens in Japan and elsewhere, where people really truly use that phone to pay for things directly, more frequently, at the point of purchase. I know you can go to the grocery store now, you wave your phone at the, and it downloads your coupons. Or Cocoa Beach was experimenting with parking meters that in order to, you know, you had to have some kind of app on your phone to make the parking meter work. Has encryption and security been able to keep up with this kind of?
No, not really. For example, you know, I mean, I'll probably pop into Starbucks right after this, and boom, phone, scan, done. Sure. It's tied to my credit card. You know, automatically reloads, and I don't really think about it. I don't really think that that's money coming out of my account. Encryption only goes so far because ease of use is king. So I don't have to type any magic password for these things. I unlock my phone, I hit a button, boom, now I can scan my phone and, you know, here's my Doppio, right? And I've got my coffee fix for the next hour. But it's really a mess. And it's driven by loss, right? So we love ease of use. And so we go, oh, great, you know, I can pay for X, Y, or Z with my phone. How convenient is that? But when we start to feel pain from it, maybe we'll change. And again, because the system's changing and moving so quickly, laws are not keeping up, and security isn't keeping up. As a security guy, I'll tell you that security is sometimes the last thing we think of. You know, there'll be some market guy going, oh man, wouldn't it be cool if we could do X, Y, or Z? And there's some poor security guy in the back room tearing their hair out going, oh, I'm going to secure that.
Great. Yeah, you can put the little credit card scanner on your phone now. I mean, that almost seems quaint. Like at some point, why would you even need the scanner if the phones can talk to each other, trade internet, trade credit card information, and the like? Well, it worries me a little bit. Apps. Is there anything that we should know about apps, about staying safe with these, about good sources or risks that they pose? So,
very different from Apple to Android. Big difference. Apple is very much what I'd call a walled garden. And one of the criticisms they've had is that they're a walled garden. So, you know, there's one place to get apps. They've got to be a certain way. They're all sort of pre-approved. And there's an advantage to that, and that's a little bit safer. Android is the Wild West. You know, it's like one of my students wants to write an app. They sit down, they write an app. And it's awesome because it's free and open and exciting, but it also makes it a lot easier to abuse. So in some ways, Apple, a little bit safer. Android's the Wild West. Now the Google Play Marketplace is a little bit safer, but even there they've had some problems with malware. But when you go out and just start putting random apps on your phone from random places, bad things can happen to your phone. And it comes down to knowledge. The other thing is that a lot of these apps, when something's free, you have to recognize that it's not free. You're the product. right? Anytime you don't see a charge for something, they're making money somehow. A lot of times somebody didn't write that because they're a good guy. They want to make money.
Okay.
And so it might be pushing advertising to you, or it might be gathering metadata about your usage, which can, over time, again, big data tells me a lot about you.
I downloaded a free guitar tuner app the other day, and I'm thinking, what is this person gaining by sharing this with me for free?
Well, and that's the problem. Sometimes it's just that they are a good guy. And other times it's they're pushing ads or they're gathering information. And if you actually look at the terms of use, you can sometimes figure it out.
Or they're looking at my pictures on my, my picture gallery online. Malicious code and threats, is it still pretty much crooks looking to steal our money, or is there something else out there?
Crooks and foreign intelligence services, both. We're dealing with both right now. We're dealing with things like Stuxnet and Flame, and we've seen that those proof of concepts work, right? They work very well, and they're very good for getting a good footprint out there for intelligence gathering. But yeah, we're dealing with a lot of crooks too. Information is power.
I mean, everybody's familiar with the email. Help! I'm in jail. In Germany. I lost all my credit cards. Can you send me money? But there must be. They must be coming up with something new every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, there's a reason why those emails are so poorly written. One of my friends, Cormac Hurley at Microsoft, did a beautiful piece of research on this. He said that those emails are written badly because they don't want a million responses of people who go, really, ... check it out.
Yeah.
And because that takes them effort. They just want the few mugs who'll go, oh my gosh, let me wire it right now. Here's my here's my bank number.
Right.
So it sort of makes the process more efficient.
So somebody who's got half a brain would look at that and say, oh, this is so bad. It's just completely obvious. But what they wanted to...
As the people, yeah, so in fact, it's all about conversion and cost. So somebody looks at it and goes, well, maybe I'll check that's really my friend. Now it's work for the attacker. So they want to get rid of all those guys. That's a lot of work. They just want the people who are just immediately going to come up with, yeah, let me do that for you. And so by writing them badly, they down select to that smaller set. It's a sort of fun way of looking at the world.
The way the economy works is pretty incredible. Dr. Richard Ford, thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Matt. Always a pleasure.
Well, that's our program. I'm Matt Reed in the Florida Today newsroom. Remember, you can respond to anything you hear today or read in our newspaper or website by sending an email to letters@floridatoday.com. We'll see you here next week on WEFS and FloridaToday.com.